Alphabet Boys is a new podcast series that goes inside undercover investigations. In the first season, we're diving into an FBI investigation of the 2020 protests. It involves a cigar-smoking mystery man who drives a silver hearse.
And inside this hearse was like a lot of guns.
But are federal agents catching bad guys or creating them?
He was just waiting for me to set the date, the time, and then for sure he was trying to get it to happen.
Listen to Alphabet Boys on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When my daughter ran off to hop trains, I was terrified I'd never see her again. So I followed her into the train yard. This is what it sounds like inside the boxcar. And into the city of the rails. There I found a surprising world, so brutal and beautiful that it changed me. But the rails do that to everyone.
There is another world out there, and if you want to play with the devil, you're going to find them there in the rail yards.
I'm Danelle Morton. Come with me to find out what waits for us in the City of the Rails. Listen to City of the Rails on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or cityoftherails.com.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Oh my, welcome to this podcast in which we talk to people who are creating independent music or documenting it or care about it in a deep way or have been profoundly influenced by this whole punk, hardcore, indie rock, metal community that we love so much. I am hanging out here because I'm very excited to bring you today's guest. And this is a friend that I always like to say old friends, but then that sometimes means that like they're old. I guess technically he is old because I'm old. So anyways, Teppei Teranishi from Thrice. He plays guitar in the long-running rock, hardcore-ish hybrid. I don't know what you would even define Thrice at this point. I guess independent rock band. How about that? But I have now almost collected every single member of Thrice, which will be fun when I'm able to track down Dustin. Honestly, there's nothing preventing me from texting Dustin to be like, yo, come on the show, because he for sure will. But, I like to roll this out over a many-year process, because you can actually go back to the very, very first episode of this podcast, which I might not encourage you to do because, maybe not the best of listens, but I had Riley from the band, and that was a fun chat some 10-odd years ago, because we're like, episode 540-something-ish. But anyways, Teppei is a great chat, and it's very funny because Thrice prides themselves on being incredibly boring humans, and I say that with a lot of love in my heart. But they, they're not filled with drama. Like them as individual people, they are very even-keeled, very gentle, nice humans. And so when I texted Teppei to come on, he was like, dude, I'm going to be boring. And I'm like, I promise you won't. It'll be a nice chat. And that's exactly what transpired. So yeah, that's what we got coming up. But I want to tell you a few things. First of all, I am going to be in Japan with my band Taken from March 1st to the 5th. So if you are in Japan and you listen to the podcast, first of all, thank you very much. And come say hi, come to the shows. I think only one is sold out as of right now, but it's us and Hopes Fall. I'm incredibly excited to play shows because I have not played a show since 2019. And that is weird because I've played shows for most of my life. But anyways, going over to Japan, huge shout out to Koba, who is the promoter extraordinaire over there. He plays in a band called Loyal to the Grave. Just one of the kindest humans I've ever met in my life. And he's bringing us over there, and we're playing with Hopes Fall. And it's going to be really exciting. Melodic hardcore at its finest. So that's what we got. You can always email the show 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. I love to receive feedback or just general niceties. Or maybe if you're mean, you want to be mean to me, you can totally do that. I don't necessarily respond well to that, but you get the point. You can also leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. I highly encourage you to do that. It lets the algorithms know that people are engaging with this content, and that obviously is an important thing for this podcast to get discovered. You can also do the same thing on Spotify, where you just leave a little star rating on your mobile application of Spotify, and it helps out tremendously. And shortly after I return from Japan, I am very excited to do my first ever live podcast here in the States at the LDB Fest in Louisville, Kentucky. You will be able to find a link to buy tickets because there's a few tickets left. It was sold out up until like a week ago, and they got a few more added and blah, blah, blah. But I'm very excited to be going there, having some chats with people who are playing the festival. I'll announce that as it comes closer. But buy tickets to the festival. If you live anywhere in the Midwest or the West Coast or the East Coast for that matter, go to LDB Fest because I've never attended personally, and I'm really, really excited because they've built something special. 10 years they've been doing this fest, and it has reached what I would say a crescendo of excitement. This thing is going to go off in a really, really major way. So that is all the stuff that I wanted to let you know about. But let's talk to Teppei. And actually, last thing before we dive into the interview with Teppei, this episode is sponsored by Iodine Recordings and their 30th anniversary reissue of one of my favorite records of all time, Quicksand's Slip. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. They have lovingly put a lot of effort into remastering the thing, repackaging it, and there's this unbelievable deluxe book. We're talking like I don't even remember how many pages it is. 64 pages? That sounds about right. 64 pages where there's liner notes extraordinaire. And I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing because it's nice and thick and oh my gosh. But yes, Iodine Recordings is an amazing record label. You need to check out so much cool stuff that they have going on. They reissued Stretch Armstrong's Rituals of Life. They have also done some really, really cool stuff around other bands that they released back in the day. There's a band called Orange Island that was really good, and some new up-and-coming bands, like a band called Her Heads on Fire, members of Garrison. They just have a lot of cool stuff, and I'm really excited because I love Iodine Recordings. So check out Iodine Recordings on the webs. You can follow them on Instagram, or you can find a link in the show notes where you can check out what they have going on, especially the Quicksand 30th anniversary reissue of Slip. Now, here's the discussion with Teppei.
Hold on tight and don't let go. I won't ever let you fall.
Clearly, Thrice runs deep in my DNA. And my interactions with you, I was trying to reflect on like when we first started to, meet and hang out and play shows together and stuff like that. It was always interesting because, obviously all of the members of Thrice are, absolute weirdos in their own right. And you in particular, I found really interesting because you were always, and I'm sure this has been echoed to you in many respects. Like you were the, sort of quiet, introspective guy, the quiet guy in the group. But then every discussion that you and I did have and every interaction we did have was always, in my mind, very deep, meaningful, and just like it was more than the surface level. It was like you were always like, Bray, tell me about you. Like it was just that very genuine curiosity. And I'm going to guess, like, because that you've been that way for as long as I've known you, has that always kind of been your gear, so to speak?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, yeah, I've always been the quiet kid. Like, yeah, in school, I feel like people were always like, "Oh, I thought you were a jerk because you just didn't talk to people." I was just quiet. Just kind of doing my own thing.
Right. Do you think that's a symptom of because correct me if I'm wrong, you are an only child, correct or no?
Correct, yeah.
Right. And I know that you and I connected on that because we both are, can keep each other occupied as only children. Do you think that's a symptom of the, I guess, only childness, or is that something else?
I'm sure that adds to it, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm an introvert just by nature. But yeah, I definitely was an only child and spent a lot of time just on my own, not needing to talk to anybody.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm sure that plays into it,
Yeah.
I'm like, I think for me, I'm okay with silence, which I think most people aren't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I get there's awkward silence, but for me, it's usually not that awkward. I'm like okay with it for some reason.
Right. You're like, oh, finally, there's a moment. Well, I think that I do. I mean, granted, you and I are coloring from the experience of being an only child, but there is a beauty in that idea of being able to occupy yourself within whatever context you're in, whether it's, as an adult or as a kid where you're creating these whole different worlds. Or I always joke around, my example of an weird only child experience is like playing Monopoly by yourself and playing against other fictional characters. Cause that's what I did.
Okay.
Yeah. But to your point of just that idea that like you are comfortable in yourself. So those awkward silences that other people may feel maybe just aren't there for you because you're just like, that's fine.
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know, obviously, born and raised in Orange County. Where did you actually live from a city perspective? Was it always Irvine and that general vicinity?
Well, I was actually born in San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
My parents were going to Cal Poly up there when I was born. And then I spent a couple years in Santa Barbara. And then it was in LA, so Torrance and Gardena. And then what was it? 4th grade was when I moved to Irvine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were your were the moves that were happening because your parents were following jobs, and then that's what ultimately led them to Irvine?
Honestly, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think. Yeah, I think it was like kind of the safety thing, and they saw that it was a good place to raise a kid, and yeah. And then I didn't know about the Santa Barbara experience, as it were. I mean, granted, I'm sure you were young, like you were talking about. Do you have any, I guess, memory pre Irvine, like living in LA and Santa Barbara? I definitely remember LA. Santa Barbara, not so much. I have like really vague, scattered memories. Yeah, I was little. I was probably like 3 or 4.
Sure. Was the move from LA to Irvine? Did you feel that was disruptive? Because I know that moves, when you're, no matter how far they are, like even when you're moving schools, like, oh, I'm away from my friends and that sort of stuff. Were you okay with it, or were you bummed because you had to leave your friend group in LA?
I don't remember caring all too much. Yeah, for better or for worse, I think one of my traits is that I just kind of go with the flow.
Sure.
And I don't remember putting up a stink or anything. I just remember moving. I remember it was kind of a culture shock though, because Irvine back then was really different. It was, it was probably like a tenth of how it's built out now, Mm-hmm. So it was a bunch of farms, really, like orange groves and farms. And so I remember coming from LA, I was like, what the heck? Where am I? Like, where do I
That's true. It almost was probably the feeling of moving to, a rural area, even though Irvine, yes, it is rural at that time, but like no one would ever look at it now and be like, oh, that was rural at one point.
Yeah, but it really was. I would say like on the cusp of being rural, I would say back then. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know your family structure, like mom and dad in the house, and like we were talking about only child. Were you, because I presume that were both your parents working as you were going through elementary school?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Were you kind of that, I guess, latchkey kid? Like you were, I mean, your parents were there taking care of you, but a lot of stuff you kind of maybe had to figure out on your own?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, my wife and I talk about this all the time because she was kind of the same way. She was an only child, but, she kind of grew up similar in that sense. And just how different it is for our kids right now.
Right.
But yeah, definitely. Like, I used to go to like an after school program when I was in elementary school, but I think I want to say maybe from like 6th grade on, I was just kind of on my own. Like I would finish school, come home, and just do my own thing. Like I remember cooking myself like food when I got home.
Right.
Or like, and I would just go romp around the neighborhood and yeah.
Yeah. Right. You just like, all right, cool. I got my, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I'm going to watch some TV. And I'm going to go out and, whatever, ride bikes and do that sort of stuff. And then, yeah, I'll come back for dinner.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. No cell phones. No, like,
right.
Just be out there and your parents would trust that you would come home.
Yeah. They're like, we know where you live. Like, we know that you know our address. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And did you, as you started to, develop some sort of likes, dislikes, and identity. I mean, that definitely happens later elementary and, junior high. Were you gravitating towards, sports? Did you care about your studies? Like, what did you find yourself kind of looking towards?
I definitely didn't play sports. Fun fact, I actually played my first organized sport anything last night.
Dude, that's that's incredible.
At the age of 42, yeah.
What'd you play?
So Dustin, of all people, convinced me to join this like adult co-ed soccer league.
Oh, nice.
And so we played a game last night, and that was like literally my first experience with that, which is wild.
That is insane. If you like you're never playing Little League or anything like that. And that's amazing. Did you enjoy it?
I think so. Yeah. No, it was fun.
Yeah.
Fun. I'm a soccer fan, and all three of my kids play. And so I'm around it a lot. So it was actually fun to be on the other side of it for once,
Yeah. You're like, I'm not just a observer. And I can actually like kick the ball as opposed to encouraging my children to kick the ball.
Well, at least try. I mean, so that's the thing, right? Is like it looks a lot different. Like you know what's supposed to happen.
Yep.
As like a fan of the sport and having been around it so much with my kids, like I understand what's supposed to happen and what you're supposed to do, but knowing what you're supposed to do and actually physically being able to do it is two very, very different things. I learned that very quickly. Yeah.
Right. Like this is, it's like the idea of never playing a sport and then just playing it via video games. And you're just like, why can't you do a bicycle kick? Like, this is weird.
It was humbling. It was good.
Right. That's good. And so you didn't do sports. Like, did you care about school? Were you getting, because I mean, I know the stereotype, obviously, of Asian cultures. Like, okay, here we go. You got to care about school.
My parents were kind of hippies in that sense. They, my mom was actually a teacher, well, on and off, but yeah, she cared about education, but I grew up with her actually telling me like grades that don't really matter. As long as you're actually learning something and that you're finding things that you're curious and interested in, then that's what's important. So I think in that sense, I was really lucky. But yeah, so I didn't really have a big focus on school. Didn't play sports. Honestly, dude, just playing and like hanging out with friends. And I think it was just before middle school, so just before 7th grade, that I discovered skateboarding. And as soon as I found that, I mean, I was 100% skateboarding 24/7. That's all I thought about.
Right. I love when that. And I'm sure, even though your parents, like, I guess, how did they react to skateboarding as you started to get into it? Just because they probably, whatever, knew about it from a pop culture perspective, but were they reticent in you kind of picking up a skateboard and rolling around, or they're cool with it?
No, they were totally cool with it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think they probably were like, hey, Teppei found something to do,
Right. Yeah, this kid's is kind of just, hanging around like, oh, now he's passionate about something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess on that top, like, was that more so like junior highs when you really started to dive into that full throated?
Yeah. If I remember correctly, yeah, I think it was like the summer going into 7th grade is when I kind of found it and started going pretty hard with it.
Got it. Was the hope also like, I mean, once you started to experience it more and, did you because correct me if I'm wrong, but like you actually like, competed in competitions and like you were kind of maybe trying to go for it from a pro perspective, or am I like misreading that completely?
No, I didn't do any competitions or anything
Okay.
like that. I was very serious about it. I mean, if you asked me back then if I was going to go pro, I would have probably told you I'm going to try.
Sure.
But I mean, the reality of that, I kind of hit pretty quickly. but I mean, I was very serious about it. That's like I said, that's seriously all I cared about or thought about or did for a long time. So
right. I presume you were diving deep into the video magazines and skate magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah, Forum ones, Transworld, Thrasher, like I had them all.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think too, I mean, just because you and I are the same age, like I never was good at skateboarding, but I worship the culture. And I think that was such a portal into not only a community, but just an understanding all of the, aesthetics and fashion and style. Like there was so much wrapped up into it, even though you were just like, oh, I just like skateboarding.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Ed and I talked because, Ed was an avid skateboarder as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about it a lot, like how much that culture influenced us, and especially even our music tastes. I think I could probably credit skateboarding for my discovery of punk rock. So I mean, it definitely shaped and molded my tastes and my culture and my life a lot.
Wait, you mean to tell me you like band merch? And you like supporting bands? Well, look no further than our awesome friends at rockabilia.com and use this code 100 words or less for 10% off your entire order. I don't care if you're into Metallica, Blink, or AC/DC, Grateful Dead, Motley Crue. They have everything you could shake a stick at. And it's all officially licensed. The band gets paid. It ships from the Midwest here in the United States of America, and they get it out to you lickety split. Customer service is top notch. This business has been operating for over 20 years, so they know exactly what they're doing, and is co-owned by a hardcore kid. So I co-sign it all over the place. But go to rockabilia.com, buy some stuff for your friends, your family, yourself, so much cool stuff, and use the code 100 words or less, 10% off your order, and enjoy. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I myself am a huge advocate for therapy, and I think that most people would benefit from it. Because, life just really gets in the way sometime, whether it's a relationship issue, a family issue, a work issue. You feel overwhelmed. You don't know where to turn to. You're like, I can't bug my family and friends about this. Like maybe I'll be able to, just push through it on my own. You do not need to be alone in this journey. And that is why BetterHelp is such a cool option. They are convenient because it's flexible, affordable, and entirely online. And all you do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. I love what they do, and I would really, really encourage you trying therapy for the first time. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can absolutely help get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/Ray. Try therapy, and trust me, it will make your life better. As you started to, go into high school, and apologies for playing a little armchair psychologist here, but you definitely always struck me as like a head in the cloud sort of person. Uh-huh. and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just in like, oh yeah, Teppei's just thinking about his own thing. Was that kind of true? Did like people say that about you, or is that again just a misrepresentation that I was placing on you?
No, I think that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I was just always kind of the quiet kid,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. You weren't going into the party per se. I mean, first of all, you were probably not going to many parties, and then second of all, not being that guy that's like, oh, here's Teppei. He's gonna be the loud party dude with the lampshade in his head or whatever.
Yeah, I'd say the exact opposite of that. Yeah.
Right. Sneaking in the back, saying hi, leaving without saying goodbye.
I think my MO was always to just be noticed as least as possible.
Right. And when you started to experience the skate community and going to skate parks and stuff like that, did you feel I guess like welcome and find your crew, or was that also kind of a solitary practice that you were excited to participate in?
No, I definitely had my crew. I can't recall exactly how, but I mean, skateboarding, especially at that time, was really small. It was definitely like a kind of a countercultural thing, I guess. But like especially in Irvine, if you skateboarded, you knew that person, whether they went to your school or not. And so, yeah, it was definitely like a small and kind of tight community, and I definitely found my people within skateboarding. Yeah, and it was different then. Like there weren't really skate parks or anything like that. So you would just, I guess you would just see other kids skating, and you'd be like, "Hey, you skate too? Oh, cool!" And then that would just be a thing. So.
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh, let's, you know where a good spot is? Like, oh, here's a great parking lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And like you said, the introduction of skateboarding and opening your world up helped music. And I know so many people found the subculture even more through, Thrasher and music videos and all that sort of stuff. What were, I guess, the bands that started to capture you at the very beginning, where it was like, oh, this sounds weird and different, and I never heard this on the radio? What kind of grabbed you?
I don't know. I guess it'd just be like, I'm trying to think of what skate videos I was watching at that time.
Sure. Yeah. So you're like, was it Welcome to Hell, or was it? Yeah.
No, yeah, it was definitely before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like early Plan B videos. So like, let's see, super early Green Day.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, Green Day was like one of my favorite bands back in that time. Beastie Boys. Pennywise.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, literally anything that was in the skate videos, that's what I wanted to listen to.
Right. And how did you start to, I guess, discover that like you could, like buy that music and, finding out more about how you can dive deeper into that side of things?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess it was just kind of in the culture. So like, I'm trying to like dig up memories that I haven't really thought about.
Totally.
And honestly, dude, I have the worst memory possible.
I know you do. So it's okay. I know, I know you were like, oh wait, you're asking me to remember like last week, let alone 20, 30 years ago.
But yeah, I mean, I think it was just, you start to get to listen to punk, and then you realize, oh, there's shows that I can go to, and it's like an accessible thing, locally. So I remember we went to shows a lot. Think, what was it? No Effects, and I think it was DI.
Oh, okay.
Played at UCI. I don't think it was the Bren Center.
Okay.
Somewhere else. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it would seem pretty weird if that was like in the basketball stadium.
Yeah. No, it was. It definitely wasn't. But it was like kind of a bigger show because NoFX was really big back then. I guess they still are probably.
Right.
But anyway, so that was like my first show I went to, and I went with some of my friends that skated.
Amazing.
Yeah.
As you started to kind of witness that subculture in full bloom, so to speak, what was it? I guess the energy, was it like the musicianship? I mean, even though arguably, obviously, punk is trying to not be a musician, but yeah, like what kind of drew you in?
I don't know. I guess. Yeah, I guess it was kind of the energy, the like, I don't know. It felt like not mainstream. You know what I mean? Like it felt a little different.
Yep.
Which I guess I thought was cool. And yeah, I think maybe just the accessibility to it. Like I said, there were shows happening all around me that I didn't know about, and I was like, oh wait, this is a whole world that exists that I didn't know that I can be a part of. And so, yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're like, I can plug in.
Yeah, I could plug in. And I was already, obviously like I was into music. And at that point I had already been playing guitar as well. So, I felt a connection to the music. And I guess having a scene or, whatever that's happening so close and so accessible that you can just kind of plug into, I think just really drew me in.
Sure. And on that idea that you had a guitar already and you were seeing some of these bands that felt probably more attainable than what you had maybe witnessed in the past, where it's like, oh, I'm clearly never going to be in like U2 or something like that. Right. Had you wanted to play in a band ever since you kind of picked up guitar, or was that like a gradual realization where it's like, oh, I can do this?
Probably the latter.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so when I first started playing guitar, like I was super in, like, so this was probably what, like 5th, 6th grade or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was super into just like metal.
Right.
So like Metallica, I don't know. I would stay up late and watch like Headbangers Ball. So that was kind of my thing. And I don't know where I'm going with this.
No, it's okay. You got into metal and then it started to, like, I mean, watching a band like, Metallica or watching Headbangers Ball, like all that stuff is so larger than life. You probably felt
exactly. So yeah. And then you punk comes around and it's like, I keep saying there's shows happening all around you. The people are like right there on stage. They don't seem like these giant, otherworldly creatures. They're just these normal people. And so, yeah, I think maybe just kind of seeing that makes you start being like, oh, maybe this is something I can do. Like if I wanted to start a band, this is something I could do.
Right. And I really like that transition that people, most kids go through, where it feels close to you as opposed to, like you said, just this really far off thing. And then the moment that you see something that you're like, oh, I could probably do some version of that. That's when it's like, all bets are off at that point.
Yeah, totally. It's funny. I've actually never really thought about it from this angle before.
Yeah. Well, that's what we do here. We explore all sides of your brain, Teppei. And so I know that essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously the internet is usually wrong. I never knew about Chapter 11. So that first of all, I can already close my eyes and picture what the band sounds like, which is amazing. Every first band name needs to have that. But that was you and Ed, right?
No. So that
was you and Dustin, right?
Well, yeah. So Chapter 11 was, I actually think that was Thrice.
Okay.
That was just one of the names we were tossing around when we were thinking about starting the band.
Okay.
But I think what you're referring to is Dustin and I had a band for like a hot second before Thrice with two of our other friends called Out of Step.
Oh, beautiful. I already hear that in my brain too.
Well, no, it didn't sound like Minor Threat. I wish it did.
Yeah.
I don't think we, oh, maybe we did. I think maybe we had like one or two maybe originals, maybe.
Okay.
I don't even know if we did. We played one show, which was in a parking lot of like a coffee bar or something like that somewhere in Irvine.
Amazing.
And we did like a Blink-182 cover.
as you do.
And I don't even know what we played, honestly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
Dustin didn't sing. Dustin was not singing.
That's incredible.
Sang like one song.
Sure.
I think he was playing bass as well.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And that being your first foray into playing a show, was that, especially as an introvert, there's that idea that it's terrifying for even extroverts to go up on stage. So like, were you nervous? Was it exciting? Was it a combination of both, I'm guessing?
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah. And I guess on that same topic, like you clearly have been going on stage and playing in front of a lot of people for a decent amount of time. Is there any nerves about you anymore? Or do you feel like it kind of goes into a different zone for you?
No, not really. It hasn't been for a long time, I think. I don't know. That's just one of the like great paradoxes of my life. Like if you told me to go up in front of like 20 people and make a speech, I would be terrified, but somehow I can do that. I don't know. I have no idea why.
Right. I mean, honestly, just as a outside observer of watching you play an innumerable amount of shows over the time that I've watched you, it seems like, especially because arguably, like all of you guys are introverts.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's fair to say.
Right. But it's like you guys are able to do that as a collective unit because you all know that there's that like level of uncomfortableness, and then you're all just kind of like doing your own thing, but then you can kind of come all together. So I don't know. Again, just me as an outside observer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as you started to, get into this even probably weirder subculture, how were your parents kind of reacting to it? Or were they, again, just kind of excited that you were finding something you were passionate about and playing guitar and, going to shows and stuff?
My dad was kind of more the music fan, I would say. And he's the one that, had a guitar in the house. And that's why I started playing guitar. But he definitely was like, what the heck is this crap you're listening to?
Right.
Yeah, he was like, this sucks. But I mean, to their credit, like they let me do my own thing. Like he would give me his opinion and be like, this is horrible, but whatever, if it's your thing, that's cool.
Right. Yeah, it's like, it's terrible, Teppei, but it's your thing. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right. Did you ever, I know some kids experience this where they felt like they were able to either show a band or show something to their parents to try to help them understand it. Did you ever try to do not even like a presentation or anything, but be like, oh, okay, maybe I can show them like this really, they'll get you no use for a name or something like that. Did you ever try anything like that?
I don't think so. I think if anything, it was the other way around. I guess this was like pre-punk, but I do remember like when I started getting into metal, like Metallica, my dad was like, oh, you like this? Well, here's Led Zeppelin,
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, like here's Led Zeppelin 1. Like this was maybe the very beginning of heavy metal. Like you might like this. And I was like, nah, it's not heavy enough. There's no chugging, but
right. Totally.
No, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think. I think he was all right with Green Day. Cause that, like those are great songs. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Undeniably great songs. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's, the reason I bring that up is because it just triggered a memory. I remember showing my mom Elliot. Cause I was
okay. Yeah.
I was like, dude, she's going to get this. And she listens to it and she's just like, I don't like it. I'm like, well, fair. I understand this is still kind of weird music, even though it's like beautiful and super melodic.
Right.
Yeah. So was there, I guess, like a career path for you in regards to like, were you going to pursue, being a teacher like your mother or, what your father's career was? Was there any, kind of pointing you in that direction, or was it very much open for whatever you wanted to do?
No, it was definitely open and I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I graduated from high school, didn't really have like any plan for college or aspirations, to be honest. I was just going to OCC, the community college here.
Yep.
And, I mean, I vaguely I liked art and I liked music. And so I was kind of taking some art classes and some music classes and not having a clear idea of what I wanted to do with either, if any. So yeah.
I remember. That's right. I forgot you did that like recording class at OCC, right?
Yes, I did. You did. That's where I met Nick.
That's totally. That just triggered a memory because I remember going in and being like, "Oh, it's like Teppei. Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah. That's so funny." Yeah. So I imagine that was like the type of classes that you were doing, where it's like, okay, like music production, music industry adjacent. I could probably do something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, the class that Nick and I had together, I think was like, I think it was called Live Sound Reinforcement or something like that. But it was actually recording.
Uh-huh.
Wait, didn't you guys come in and do a recording?
I now that you say that, I was like, I'm fairly certain Nick volunteered us, and I'm but I cannot recall what we actually did, or like if it. I mean, it was to tape, undoubtedly, because that's what you guys were, or that's what we were recording on at that time. But
probably I
so funny.
Sworn Taken came in, yeah. But you know, I missed that class. I wasn't there for some reason.
So funny. Like the one class you would have maybe enjoyed. You're like, oh, okay, I'm missing that one. So, okay, that was the kind of the maybe path that you were looking to go on, but not a real clear idea of where you wanted to head.
No idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not going to, hit the Thrice biography beat by beat because that's been done many other places. But, as you guys obviously started to play shows, something that I always not only respected, but found very interesting was that you guys were, you were clearly playing shows and playing with all different types of bands and bands that, you arguably shouldn't have been playing with because people were just being straight up mean to you guys and be like, ooh, it's a crappy pop punk band or whatever. It seemed like that was whether it was spoken about between all of you guys or whether it was just kind of by default, you just were like, well, we're not necessarily part of any one scene. We're just kind of playing amidst all of them. Do you think that was just kind of the function of what music you guys were writing, or was that just basically because that was what was available?
I'd say both. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we joke about it all the time, but like we never fit in anywhere.
Right.
Especially back then, like you were saying, we were too heavy for the pop punk shows and we were way too melodic for the hardcore shows, but there wasn't really much in between. And so we would play either or, yeah.
It felt because of that too, like once there was an attraction to your guys' music as you started to, sign to Hopeless. And I mean, there's just so many random moments that I remember about the earlier days. Like I remember the, Virgin Megastore at Triangle Square, like just, it's like, oh, there's like 800 people that showed up. It was like, what the hell? This is crazy. Like, but because of that, I think it brought more people in because you guys didn't, adhere to being like, oh yes, we are just playing to, the pop punk scene or the hardcore scene specifically. Yeah.
I mean, I think, we didn't really have any foresight about it. We were just doing what we could, taking whatever shows we can take, But I mean, I think, in the end, I think it benefited us a lot. And I kind of like the fact that we never really adhered to one scene or anything, we just were kind of just floating through all of it.
Listen, I got a secret for you. Go to evilgreed.net and use this promo code 100 words. You're probably asking yourself, what is Evil Greed? They are an amazing web store solution company based out of Berlin, Germany. But maybe that sounds a little complicated. What do? They sell merch from some of your favorite bands. And when I say some of your favorite bands, I'm talking about labels like Triple B, Southern Lord, Sargent House. They have so much cool stuff. Like right now, I'll just give you a random example. They have a limited edition LP, Evil Greed exclusive pressing of the new Frozen Soul record called Glacial Domination, which if you are not keyed into Frozen Soul, one of the awesomest, that's probably a word, right? Awesomest bands from the metal scene based out of Texas, but use that promo code 100 words. Even though they are based in Germany, their shipping is very reasonable and it gets to you very fast. So Evil Greed acts kind of like a record label where they collect a very select handful of bands and record labels to work with, and then they ship it to you directly. It's so cool. I love Evil Greed, and use the promo code 100 words and find some amazing stuff for you and your friends. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I myself am a huge advocate for therapy, and I think that most people would benefit from it because, life just really gets in the way sometime. Whether it's a relationship issue, a family issue, a work issue, you feel overwhelmed. You don't know where to turn to. You're like, I can't bug my family and friends about this. Like maybe I'll be able to, just push through it on my own. You do not need to be alone in this journey. And that is why BetterHelp is such a cool option. They are convenient because it's flexible, affordable, and entirely online. And all you do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. I love what they do, and I would really, really encourage you trying therapy for the first time. If you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can absolutely help get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/Ray to get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/Ray. Try therapy, and trust me, it will make your life better. for you as the band, it doesn't even have to be like when the band was, playing House of Blues and selling it out or something like that. When did you kind of start to feel that there was either a tension or momentum or something that was like, oh, wow, like, I guess what we are doing is resonating with people?
I don't know. I mean, I've said this before, but like, especially with this band, I feel like there was so many different little steps that happened that I was like, oh, wow, like, I feel like we made it now, like,
of course,
I mean, even so much as like when we played our first show at Chain Reaction, like I was like, holy smokes, we did it.
Right. We're done.
Yeah. We're done. Like we could have been done there and I would have been like, we did it. And so there were so many small moments like that it's hard to pin down, but I mean,
and honestly, to me, those are that's, I guess, kind of specifically what I'm talking about. Like usually in those like earlier year, it doesn't even have to be like the dawn of the band, but just like those moments where, okay, a friend is like singing along to our songs, or like, I go out to like the local mall and someone's like, oh, what's up, Teppei? You're like, I don't know that person or whatever. It's like those moments are the ones that are just like, weird. This is bigger than I thought it was ever going to be.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of micro moments like that, I guess, like honestly, like selling, playing our first Chain show, I guess signing to Hopeless, Subsidy, whatever, going and, recording our first album. Like when we first recorded Identity Crisis with Paul Miner at For the Record, I was like, whoa,
totally.
This is insane. Like we're in a real studio, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even before that, like we put out an EP after being together for like literally 3 months. And that was the first time I'd ever recorded music or heard what I've done like in like a listen backable format, And that was a huge deal. Selling out Anaheim House of Blues was a big deal. And then obviously like signing the Island, I mean, it's just like,
yeah, it's like, there's so many.
Yeah. Every little step, every little thing along the way, it was like, wow, that's really cool.
Right. And it, especially too, cause I know that, the word, it's definitely very difficult to remove ego from the art that you create, unless it's like very intentional, where it's like, I can't wrap up my identity in this because I know that this, once I release art in the world, like it's not mine anymore. But like you guys have never obviously been about the, you're the sum of its parts, as opposed to like, oh, look at Teppei, the, guitar shredder. He's going to be like Steve Vai of the, hardcore punk scene or whatever. I think probably because of that, it made you, I guess it was easier to maybe appreciate those moments because it was like, oh yeah, this isn't about me. This is about the band or whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, and genuinely, like we never meant for this to go as far.
Right.
Obviously like you hope, and it's like, you can dream about it, but we didn't expect anything, I think. And so like I said, every little like mini victory along the way was like, we really appreciated,
Yeah, absolutely. And something I also found interesting about you, just kind of collectively, is the fact that your creative output within Thrice has always been contained to that. Like, I mean, clearly every one of your band members has done some sort of side project from a musical perspective. I mean, obviously there's been other projects that you've been a part of, but you haven't done that per se. Is there any, I guess, reason in your head that you've never sort of stepped out and expressed that? I mean, I know you've done smaller projects and what have you, but has that been something you've reflected on?
Yeah, I mean, I've done like one small thing with a buddy that like is our buddy Chris, Chris, right? Chris Jones. Yeah. So he was our guitar tech for a few years, and we just wrote some songs in the back of the tour bus one tour, and they were all just just kind of fun, like super lighthearted songs that we came home and recorded. But that's really the only thing I've done, I think. But yeah, I think for me, I've always had so many other interests too. And, playing in a band and doing music is my entire life, and it takes up all my time. So in my spare time, I think I like to do other things, I guess.
Right. It's like, I'm already expressing myself this way. Like, why do I need to continue to do that when I can do, like you said, all these other things?
Yeah. And I mean, not necessarily like, why would, I mean, I think it would be fun, I think it'd be fun to do some other music and, express musically like in different ways, but, I don't know. I guess actions speak louder than words. Like,
Sure.
My priorities, I guess, or what I want to actually do in my other time is other stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm sure it was like kind of going back to your passion for skating. I know you worked at a active ride board shop, and I know that you are a part of that whole community, just because it was a movement, I would say, within Southern California. Skate retail, it was quite a thing. Was that fun, where you were able to obviously get people that I'm sure walked in the shop and were like, "Oh, Teppei, like I saw you guys just recently." Like, was that a fun interaction, or did you start to get kind of like, "Okay, guys, like this is kind of weird. Like, I'm just working here."
No, we never really. I mean, by the time we were actually like pretty active and touring and stuff, I wasn't working there anymore.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think I ever really got that.
That's cool. That's good. The something I know that, I mean, you've articulated in other places in regards to the shift away. I mean, once you moved up to Washington and obviously started your Leatherworks business, and the idea of stepping away from something that you had been a part of for so long, and then also the idea of like starting a business while also existing as a father figure and husband. Did you I guess, like, did it get not dark per se, but did it get overwhelming where you're just like, holy crap, this is too much change in a short period of time? Or does it go back to kind of your nature of a person, was like, well, I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and see what comes of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little of both. I mean, it's impossible not to be scared, I think. I mean, it like you said, we've been doing the music thing and playing in a band for our entire adult lives at that point, and I had nothing else. And
sure.
I had a family to raise and, whatever. So, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So yeah, I mean, in that light, it was definitely scary, but I think my sort of like go with the flowness helped me get through that without panicking too much at all.
Right. You're like, I will be able to figure this out in one way or another, even if it comes to me, playing my guitar on the street and like busking or whatever. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, I knew I could always turn to music, right? Like I could, like the other kind of main thing that I thought I could maybe fall back on was recording, because I'd recorded a couple of Thrice's records at that point, and had been asked, by bands and stuff in the past to produce or record records and stuff. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind. Like I can always kind of try and fall back on that and see if I can pursue that. Touring was always an option, like trying to just find like a touring gig or like even teching.
Sure. So
I felt like I had kind of a plan B with that. But at the same time, again, like I've had a lot of different interests in my life, and I've only had the chance to focus on one thing, and so I took that hiatus as a chance to try something different for once, which is what I did.
Yeah, totally. It's like, flipping the page and being like, oh, cool. Like, as cheesy or hyperbolic as it sounds, it's like the future is unwritten. Like I can do something different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I've always found interesting about you as a guitar player is that it's a real thin line of people, sort of like slobbering over your pedals and your gear and your technicality, because, frankly, people do that for you and look up to you as a guitar player, but you've never I guess put yourself out there to the point where it's just like, all right, like I am that authority, you know? And was that kind of always like the equipment and the experimentation and the stuff that you were bringing towards the band? Was that always just something that you were, looking for a way to express yourself? Or was it a matter of just like, I want to stay away from like that side of things without obviously disrespecting them, but that's just not something I'm interested in?
What, like just
like the gear? Yeah, like
gear or like
totally just like the
about this or that,
right? Like, because it does seem to me that you have balanced the idea that like, oh, I'm this, virtuosic guitar player and I'm just like a guy in a band. Like there's that middle ground, I think, that you've been able to carve out where it's like, oh yeah, like I'm proud of my work, but I'm not, like I guess up my own butt, so to speak, with that.
I mean, I just don't think I am.
Yeah, sure.
I truly, and I know people might like roll their eyes at me when I say this, but like, I think I do what I do for my own band. Like, well, I'm, that's cool. But as far as like a guitar player, I don't think I'm not that great of a guitar player. Like technically not great. There's like a million kids on Instagram nowadays that they're far more talented and technically capable than I am. Millions.
Right.
And so, and I've never felt like I could or should be the authority on anything, really. I don't know.
I'm sure I'm actually reflecting on the idea, like, once you guys, signed to Island and went through like the, media training and PR and stuff like that, just the idea that you had to speak about yourself just like we're doing right now. Clearly we're friends, so this isn't like a, huge press hit or whatever, but just that idea of like going through these things and being comfortable talking about yourself, was that a difficult like transition to be like, oh, I guess I have to do a little bit of this in order to, play the game? Or were you like, I'm just terrible at it, I don't really need to do that much?
Both.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, it still is a struggle, honestly. I don't like talking about myself. I don't like talking in general, to be honest. Yeah, but I have accepted it as like, this is part of the job, like it or not. And yeah, just try to make the best of it, I guess.
Right. Yeah, you're like, listen, I guess people are interested in me, so like I guess I'll have these conversations. We'll see where they go. But yeah, like I'm sure you had the experience too, where you like were turning back the interview, like you were asking the interviewer questions, and it's like, this isn't about me, this is about you, Teppei. Just hold on for a moment.
No, we've never been great with press or anything. We've literally had publications turn down stories on us because we're too quote unquote boring. Like it's a real thing.
Totally. Yeah, that's what I find so awesome about band. Honestly, like a band like Jimmy Eat World, same thing, where it's just like there's like, hey, let's find drama or some interesting story. It's just like, we're just friends and we play music together. It's like, that's it. There's no angle.
Yeah, that's pretty. Same.
Yeah, totally. You're just like, yeah. If you want to talk about skateboarding, I can talk to you about that for an hour. But about myself, like, no, come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you as a father, you're a father to three, correct? Or 4 boys?
Oh gosh, 3.
That's what. Okay, I just added one in there for no reason.
Yeah, that scared me. Wow.
I know. I apologize. I didn't mean to freak you out there. Journeying along in regards to the fact that you had to, in some way, shape, or form, rebel against your parents as far as like figuring out how to, be your own person with your own likes and interests and stuff like that. And it probably didn't make sense to them. How do you kind of deal with rebellion and the things that they're getting into that you're just like, wow, I don't understand a lot of this, whether it's watching, Minecraft videos for hours or whatever the case may be. How are you, I guess, kind of navigating that, knowing that you're still obviously in the middle of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I actually feel pretty blessed to have had my parents deal with my stuff the way they did, with just kind of like oh, that's weird. I think that's lame, or that's cool, or whatever. But that's your thing, and you do your thing. As long as obviously, like, I wasn't doing anything to like harm other people or anything like that. So I think it would have been a different thing had that been the case. But so I think I try and approach it from that same kind of angle. Where I'll be honest with them about what my opinion is, but in the end of the day, it's like, you're your own person, and you do your thing. And if that's what you want to do, then, cool.
Right. Right. It's like,
like a prime example of that is, I came home with my ears pierced one day, and my mom literally fell on the floor laughing, like just dying, laughing at me because she thought it was the silliest thing ever.
Sure. But
she was like, "You look like a moron, but you know what? Whatever. Like, if that's what you're doing, then sure."
Right. How'd they deal with your tattoos as you started to get those?
I think same thing, I was a little older too at that time, but
right.
It was like, huh, that's weird, but okay.
Right.
Are you sure you thought about that? All right.
Totally. It's like, oh, you're going to get your whole arm? Is that what you're doing, Teppei?
Yeah. I think pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I love that, where it's like the idea of parents roasting their kids on, and then I'm sure you were just like, whatever, you don't know anything, Mom.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I was like, whatever, Mom, I look cool.
Yeah. Have you not looked at me? Like, this is really cool. Of course. The last thing I wanted to hit on was the idea that, since Thrice is obviously, very much back in your life, but you guys are doing it in a much more manageable way. And there's obviously a path forward for bands to be able to do that kind of in general. I know that it's obviously refreshing for you guys to be able to, go for 2-3 weeks and then, come home and be able to exist as a whole human, as opposed to just kind of a part of a human. I'm going to guess, like, as you were ending your very extensive touring when the band was, on the road for 250 days out of the year, did you feel like you were just like sort of half of a person, so to speak, or were you kind of able to balance the two?
I think we slowed down at the right time. We were definitely touring like that for a number of years, but it was also when we were younger. And I think it was when we had the mental and physical, I guess, capacity and energy to handle that. I certainly don't at this point. Yeah. And then obviously, once we started having kids and all that, it just naturally kind of started ramping down. And then, especially after taking the hiatus, we were able to take a couple steps back. And, when we came back into it, we were able to be like, okay, we're going to limit the touring. We're going to do, A, B, C, and D to try and, be able to live normal lives outside of the band and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Did you feel like that also helped the creative input in regards to the fact that you could all bring, either whether it was the fact that you had time to be able to sit at home and write riffs or, drum patterns or whatever it is? Do you feel like that was also helpful as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's important to have space from anything, really. It just gives you the mental capacity to just to create. I think you need some space to be able to do that.
There you have it. That was Teppei, and like I said, one step closer to collecting the entire band of Thrice on the podcast. Next week, I will actually be in Japan, but this podcast does not stop publishing, baby. So I have an exciting episode planned with the organizers of LDB Fest in Louisville, Kentucky. Talk about a stacked lineup. They got Knocked Loose, Terror, karma. I could go on, but you can easily find a link in the show notes of this particular episode, and you will be able to find it. I have a discussion with 4 people. We have the originators of LDB Fest, Ryan and Alex, and then Colin and Julia, who started helping out the fest probably about 2 or so years ago. And we get a nice perspective of what it's like to run a music festival and what makes Louisville, Kentucky special. So that's what I got next week, a 4-headed monster for this particular episode. So it'll be a fun one because I cannot wait to go out there and hang out in Louisville, eat some good vegan food, and watch some rad bands. So until then, please be safe, everybody.
Alphabet Boys is a new podcast series that goes inside undercover investigations. In the first season, we're diving into an FBI investigation of the 2020 protests. It involves a cigar-smoking mystery man who drives a silver hearse.
And inside this hearse was like a lot of guns.
But are federal agents catching bad guys or creating them?
He was just waiting for me to set the date, the time, and then for sure he was trying to get it to happen.
Listen to Alphabet Boys on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When my daughter ran off to hop trains, I was terrified I'd never see her again. So I followed her into the train yard. This is what it sounds like inside the boxcar. And into the city of the rails. There I found a surprising world, so brutal and beautiful that it changed me. But the rails do that to everyone.
There is another world out there, and if you want to play with the devil, you're going to find them there in the rail yards.
I'm Danelle Morton. Come with me to find out what waits for us in the city of the rails. Listen to City of the Rails on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or cityoftherails.com.
In 1967, Joseph Stalin's only daughter flees Russia for her new home, America.
Hello to everybody. I am very happy to be here.
That story alone is worthy of a podcast, but Svetlana is about what comes next, and it's the craziest story I've ever heard. It has KGB agents, a Frank Lloyd Wright commune, weird sex stuff, 3 Olgas, 2 Svetlanas, and 1 neurotic gay playwright. That's me. Listen to Svetlana on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.